Welcome to today's episode of Insights with Us. I'm Anastasia, a licensed professional counselor and EMDRIA certified trauma specialist. I am owner of Happy Mind Wellness Company, a Colorado-based therapy practice, and creator of this podcast. My goal is to use this platform to help others find their voice as we share our journeys and show support as we learn more about ourselves and life. Growth happens when we get uncomfortable, which happens when we sit with new ideas we haven't sat with before. I hope that we can work on this journey of personal growth and understanding together. As a disclaimer, sometimes there's swearing in this podcast. We get caught up in the human experience. It happens. And sometimes we can talk about difficult or activating topics. So maybe put on some headphones if you need to, and remember that support exists for you if you want it. Today, I am joined by Faye Maguire, a licensed addictions counselor serving clients in Colorado through depth psychology, also known as Jungian or transpersonal therapy, which is all about finding the unity in your body, mind, and spirit. She uses art and dreams as a doorway to your healing, as well as somatic work, breath work, and focusing on the present moment. And Faye didn't start out as a counselor. So today, we're going to explore the different seasons of her life, how she uses curiosity and cues from her body to recognize that it's time to move in a different direction, and how to notice and accept the parts of ourselves we often try to push down or run away from. So with that, let's get started and see if we can build some insight today. Welcome, Faye, to Insights with Us.
Hi, Anastasia.
It's so good to see you.
Happy to be here.
I was thinking maybe we could start just by maybe you giving us a brief understanding or long understanding of your life. You have had so much life that you have lived, and you've gone through so many seasons. I would love to hear how you got to now.
Wow, that could take a while.
We've got the time, and I would love to hear it.
Yeah, it's interesting to think back. I have been on the move a lot of my life. I haven't been that person that stayed around where I grew up. I've moved around a lot. And I think it's interesting that my life has turned out that way. Partly it's turned out that way because I was raised in a very rural, conservative, religious family and area, Western Pennsylvania. And I just was, from a young age, really anxious to get away, eager to get away. I just wanted to see the world. And so I did that. I traveled as much as I could. Once I went to college, I did a semester abroad in France. And oh gosh, I started just taking little trips. I spent a summer in Ireland, and I actually was bartending in Ireland. But once I graduated from college, and I just landed in Denver and put down roots in Denver.
What did you study in college?
I studied English and French literature. Somewhere I can hear Garrison Keillor. It was the Prairie Home Companion was a show on PBS for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And he would always joke about English majors and, what do you do with your life?
Yeah. What do you do with your life? What did you hope to do with that versus what actually happened?
Right. Well, after being a complete and total bum for most of my 20s and just working in restaurants and bartending and waiting tables and traveling as much as I could, I settled down when I was 31 and got married. And my husband was a philosophy major. So what do you do with a philosophy and an English major? You open a coffee house.
Okay. What was the vibe of the coffee house? Like, what were you hoping to do with that?
With the coffee house?
Yeah.
Just make a living without having anybody being our bosses. I would say we both were pretty independent. And, I think I always wanted to be involved in some sort of community organization. Mm. And a coffee house in the 80s in Denver It was a social hub, as one of my employees so memorably described it to me one time. I was like, yeah, that's what it is. And this is before laptops and cell phones and all that. So people went to the coffee house to talk and to
Mm.
visit and to smoke a lot of cigarettes. So that's what you do with an English degree. And it was great. It was really fun for a long time until it stopped being fun after close to 30 years. But yeah, it was a big part of Denver's social scene in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. It was called Paris on the Platte. Yeah. Yeah, we had a hard time deciding on the name, but we wanted it to be like a European style coffee house and bookstore. We had to use bookstore as well. And the Platte River is a French name. So we were like, okay, we're going to be on the left bank of the Platte River. Anyway, we just came up with that, and it worked.
What did you learn during that season? Like 30 years of owning this coffee house social hub.
Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like and what did you take from it?
Mm. You know, I would say I probably had to really learn to be a good boss. I feel like the more social aspect of dealing with customers and interacting with people who came pretty easy to me, but learning to be in charge of employees as a basic people pleaser my whole life, that was a challenge. It was something I really had to learn.
Okay.
And it took me a while. I think I made a lot of
Yeah.
mistakes.
What did you end up settling on? Like, I am also a people pleaser. Unfortunately, I don't have any employees, but what system worked for you?
Well, I think you just have to keep in mind what's going to be best for your business. And you have to be able to trust people and also not trust them at the same time.
Mm.
The paradox. That's something I'm thinking about a lot lately, and I think we always think about as therapists. But you have to have just the right amount of trust in people, or you can't have employees. You can't work with people.
Mhm.
But you also have to be aware that sometimes people will rip you off or harm you if they can. Or even it's not necessarily personal, but they just don't want to come into work, so they don't.
Mm.
It's a challenge. I mean, that could be a whole discussion right there. And I think it gets into a lot of how our relationships work
Mm.
with people throughout our lives.
Yeah, I'm sitting with this concept, kind of letting it marinate in my nervous system. And I mean, it's so true because you want to assume good intentions and trust them and give the people in your life the independence to show up as themselves and be
Right.
authentic. But you
Yeah.
also need to be able to set boundaries and hold them accountable. And if
Mm-hmm.
they do or say something that hurts you, being able to stand up for yourself in that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very challenging dynamic to navigate for anyone.
It's a big part of parenting as well, because being a people pleasing personality as a parent, it's like all you want is for your children to be happy, but they can't have everything they want. So
Oh.
there's
And
going to be
life
a
is
lot
going
of
to get in
this.
the way of happiness sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So that's where I think, and I think this also applies to counseling, working as a counselor, that we run into things that people expect from us, or
Mhm.
they want it, when a client wants advice, and your philosophy as a counselor is, I'm here to help you make your own decisions,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah, I want you to find the confidence to trust yourself and find your own path. I'm not here to tell you what to do.
Yeah. Oh, and that's where I was going. Yeah, with working with employees is how do you find people who have their own inner sense of drive, ethics, curiosity, interest? I mean, those are the people who succeed in therapy and who succeed in life, right? As opposed to if you work just because you're going to get a paycheck, you're not going to do as good a job as somebody who shows up because they want to do a good job and they want to learn things. And I
Yeah.
wish, if we could figure that out,
Yeah.
right?
Oh. So what's coming to mind for me is I'm really good at math. I haven't practiced it in a while, so maybe I'm a little rusty right now. But when I was growing up, my dad really wanted me to be an engineer because I would have been amazing at it.
Hmm.
But when I thought about what that work meant, it
Hmm.
would have driven me insane. Like I would have just been doing it for a paycheck.
Hmm.
And I couldn't do it. I had to choose something that helped me follow my dreams, that met with my values, that I had passion for. And honestly, I didn't expect to be a counselor either.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't my original plan, but like I'm so happy that I'm here because I do show up with that
Right.
curiosity and that intention and
Right.
that determination to do this work.
Right.
And it's like that, it's like critical thinking mixed with curiosity.
Right. Well, you have one of those brains that is really connected. You're good at the interactions with people and communication, and also good with math and numbers and all that.
Thank you. Thanks.
I think you're really fascinating. My younger daughter is like that. She's
Yeah.
kind of got it all going on, which is interesting.
Mhm.
So your dad probably thought you'd be more secure and that
Yeah.
you'd be making yeah.
Mhm. He was worried that a counseling degree equated to an English degree. To
Yeah.
circle back to your life a little bit,
Right.
but he met several psychologists and counselors since I
Uh-huh.
started my grad program way back when. And they were very successful. And they were excited that I was following in that career path. And suddenly it's like he had this shift in perspective and went, wait, maybe she can do this.
Right. Yeah.
And since that moment, he's been incredibly supportive and just is like blown away with what I've achieved so far. So
It's great. Right.
it
I'm
was
I'm
very
really glad
exciting
that.
for me. That inner child in me is like, oh, he is proud of me.
Yeah, we need that,
I
right? Yeah.
do.
We
Uh,
need somebody in our court.
yeah.
With,
So coming back to your life story for a second, because you had this coffee shop for 30 years and then you became a counselor. There was a shift in career here. What
yeah.
happened with that? How did you choose this?
It's interesting because I was really opposed to psychology and counseling and all that stuff when I was really young. I was a bit of a troubled teenager and I give my parents a really hard time. We're talking about back in the late 60s, early 70s. I think it was when I was in college, they encouraged, my mother encouraged me to find a counselor, and I did. And I mean, I just was a jerk, basically. But I just thought it wasn't going to work because I wasn't into it. I didn't think I needed help. I don't know that I thought there was a stigma to it or anything like that, but I just didn't believe in it. And it wasn't until I had a really good friend who struggled with anxiety. And I mean, you could tell this person struggled with anxiety. He was like a chain smoker and exuded nervous energy. And he started to see a Jungian counselor.
Mm.
And he was telling me about it. And the dream work really fascinated me because I'd always been really interested in dreams. I kept a dream journal from the time I was in high school. And I could see a difference in him.
Mm.
He became much more calm, much more, you could just tell that the anxiety was lessening in him. I was so impressed. And so I decided to give it a try. I went to see his therapist. I have this really clear memory of I had this dream of a giant black spider in my house, in my bedroom, big spider. And it was really scary. And I was terrified of it. And I remember when we talked about it, how we talked about it being the shadow and the symbol, the things that it symbolized. And um, I mean, I was hooked. I was so hooked. It was
Mm.
so fascinating to me.
Okay.
And so, sort of a counterpart to all this, to back up a few years, I had a really bad eating disorder from the time I was 16 until I was 26. And probably would have been a good reason to go to therapy. But how I got control or got out of the eating disorder was through grief. And there was this incident that happened. Somebody I admired died. And I recognized I had never felt that kind of grief before. At around the same time, too, a really good friend of mine also died. She was 29 years old. She had a heart
Mm.
attack.
Wow.
And so I was just plunged into this really dark space. I was crying every day. I couldn't I couldn't stop it. And at some point I realized that I was in this process where this grief was not just about these deaths. It was much, much deeper than that. That
It
it was.
unlocked something.
Mhm. And through that period of grieving, I was able to stop binging and purging and start to have a more healthy relationship with food.
Mm.
And so that tied in for me with the Jungian dream work and the depth psychology. It's like we have to deal with our darkness. We have to deal with our
Mm.
shadow. We have to come to terms with it. We have to admit it's there. We have to love it. We have to feel the pain and that it brings.
Mhm.
So that's how I decided this is for me. I feel like I want to learn more about it. I want to study it. I didn't really know where it was going as far as a career path, but I started working on my master's degree when I was 42. My youngest daughter was 4 years old,
Wow.
still running Paris.
Yeah.
And so I had three kids, a business, and I was working on my master's degree. It took me 8 years. I mean, I ran out the clock on how long I had.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, you were living a entire other life while going to school. It makes sense that you slowed that process down because you can't slow down your kids and their needs. You can't slow
yeah, you really
down running a
can't.
business,
Right,
but you can slow down classes.
right. Yeah. I think in a way too, I was kind of favoring it because
Hmm.
I just thought it was all so fascinating, and it really became the basis for my practice. That we have to go beyond talking about things. We have to go into the body. We have to go into the deep emotions. We have to go
Okay.
into trauma.
Okay, can we talk more about the Jungian, the depth psychology, the dream theory?
Mhm,
Because I don't have training in any of that. So I'm sure there's a
mhm,
lot of overlap with what I do, but I don't really know the language or the theory.
mhm, mhm.
And I think
Yeah,
everything you're saying about needing to feel it and needing to let it exist and needing to accept and love like the darker sides of yourself, that is so powerful.
yeah.
And I think it would help a lot of my listeners, our listeners.
Well, I think that for me, I've built my own ideas and practices. I'm not a Jungian analyst by any means. My therapist is, and she's great.
Well,
Um,
give me your perspective on it, your twist.
yeah, I think the biggest thing is the depth. I think that that we have to get out of our minds. I love an altered state of consciousness. And when we're in an altered state of consciousness, which I usually use breath work, our minds are active. We're not unconscious. Unconscious minds are also engaged, and our bodies are engaged. So we're getting the whole being engaged in the healing process.
Mm.
And so Jung didn't have the somatic piece. I think that came with Reich, who is, in my opinion, horribly misrepresented in modern psychology. I think he's probably not even really studied anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he was amazing. Wilhelm Reich, I think that he really brought the somatic piece into modern psychotherapy. But I think that life is full of incredible magic and symbolism and beauty. And we're only partly conscious of it, whereas our unconscious minds speak in dreams, in the dream symbology. And this is why we love art. A picture can express things that words can't. Our language is rich and profound, but there are simply some feelings and emotions that we can't express with our words. Symbols, images, colors, these things can express those ineffable that can't be put into words.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just seen dreams be so amazing for myself. I can remember certain dreams that I've had throughout my life that just were so clear to me, like, oh, yeah. And then others where I'm like, no idea what this dream is saying. And I could take it to, a classmate or my children, they've grown up listening to me talk about dreams. And they could say, oh, yeah, well, this means this and that means that. And what do you think about it? And I'd be like, oh, right. Now it's starting to make sense. But sometimes almost always dream messages, I think, are incredibly profound.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we can't hold on to them usually, we lose them. But there are ways to train your mind to remember your dreams and to write them down right when you wake up. I remember when I first was starting to take my classes towards my master's degree, I had this dream that I was in a stadium watching a game of some kind. And, the game was just progressing. And all of a sudden, like, I realized I was in a box.
Mm.
And the lid of the box opened. And sun came pouring in.
Wow.
And I stood up. And I was like, wow, oh my God, this is amazing. I haven't known this was here at all. I'm in this box and I still have seen the world, but it's muted. And
Huh.
now that this box has opened up, I can see color and light and sunshine. And boy, that was a clear message.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
It really was powerful. And I was like, okay, I'm supposed to keep doing what I'm doing, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Definitely a yes.
Yeah. Say,
Yeah.
I only remember like the stressful dreams, the
Mm-hmm.
ones that, cause a lot of anxiety within me. Um, so I wonder, I have one that I've had consistently throughout my life. Can I share it with you? And
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Those dreams are,
Hmm. So
yeah.
I almost I almost qualify it as a night terror.
Okay.
Um, and I've had it since I was a kid, on and off throughout my life. And it changes to whatever room I'm in. So if I was in my childhood bedroom, it was my childhood bedroom. If I was in a hotel room, it was whatever hotel room I was in the moment.
Whenever
And
you had the dream.
wherever I had the dream, that is the room that I am in my
Okay.
dream.
Uh-huh.
And I'm in bed, asleep or trying to fall asleep. I'm just staring up at the ceiling, and a giant bug starts crawling across the ceiling. And the bug has changed over time too, like cockroaches or spiders or centipedes. And I can't move. And I'm trapped and I'm stuck under the covers. And it crawls over my head and then drops on my face. And I always wake up at that point terrified, and I physically am like running before I even know what's happening, and I can't get back into bed until I've turned all the lights on and like checked
Mhm.
under all the covers and made sure it wasn't real, because it's so realistic every
Mhm.
time.
Wow.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does the bug represent to you? Well, I mean, what do bugs in general represent to you?
So I mean, definitely something that I don't like. I remember when I was in third grade, we had kind of like a duplex, and next door sprayed for bugs, and all of the cockroaches came through my bathroom and all over my room. And so it's like this thing that I know is there. I know it's okay that it's there, like logically, but like I
Hmm.
don't want them near me at all. It's like
Hmm.
this negative experience.
Well, and at that point in your life, you were living in Indonesia, right?
That one was in Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi. Okay, so I don't
Mhm.
imagine they have a lot of big insects.
Cockroaches are the main one, and
Mhm. They can be that
they're
big.
big.
Yeah.
They're like 2 inches long at its
Mhm.
biggest, I think.
When you were a smaller child in Indonesia, were there a lot of insects? Big
So I
insects?
don't
Or...
have many memories from Indonesia when I was a small child. Most when because I was in that was like 0 to 3, and then Abu Dhabi, I moved there when I was 6 or 7, and then stayed there through 15. I want to say, before moving back to Indonesia. And then Indonesia, when I was in high school, lots of bugs. Um, and cockroaches. There were centipedes, lots of spiders. You had to have like the mosquito netting over your bed.
Mhm.
Um,
So when you think about just in your life, if you see a scary insect, like if you got up and went to get a glass of water and there was a cockroach in your kitchen, what would you do?
probably jump back, have like a little mini freak out. And then if my partner was around, I'd probably make him deal with it. But I also know that I'm an adult now and I can handle it on my own.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
if it's a spider, I like spiders, so I typically like just move them to a different part of the house that I don't mind them being in
Mhm.
now.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So yeah, but you're not like, I'm
I'm not
not
like
coming back in
terrified of
this
them.
room because there's a bug in it. You're not like
Mm-mm.
that.
No,
Yeah, it's just you don't like them.
no.
You have
I
a
used to completely freak out and like scream
Mm.
and run away, but that has definitely shifted as I've gotten older.
Well, it seems interesting that the bug is always in the room that you are in. So it's something that you carry with you everywhere you go in your life. So it would seem to be representing a shadow aspect,
Okay.
something that you don't like about yourself or that you're scared of
Hmm.
about yourself or that you know. I mean, this is the thing about shadow images is that we do tend to recoil. We don't like to see the shadow aspects of ourselves because we like to see ourselves as being good people. And and we are, but all of us
Mhm.
have shadow
So the
aspects of
shadow
ourselves.
aspect is like the parts of ourselves that we struggle to accept.
Yeah, and usually there's I would say frequently shame involved. I mean, shame is just so icky. And,
Yeah.
it's shame. I mean, I love Brene Brown's description of shame, that there's something wrong with me. I am flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't want other people to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't want to see it ourselves.
Yeah, that resonates. I'm connecting it back to my dream of just like I feel stuck. I can't move away from it. It's coming no matter what. Um,
Yeah. And it lands right on your face, which is
mhm.
like, it's really trying to get your attention.
Yeah, like there's no avoiding this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're doing this shadow work and kind of that altered state, like you said, it's not just thinking about it, it's slowing down and sitting in the experiences that words can't explain. And what is that like to hold space for that?
Hmm. What is it like? I do most of my work online now, so I try really hard to always make sure people know that they're safe and supported and that they can come out of it whenever they want. If you were my client and you wanted to work on this dream, we would do some relaxation exercises and some slow breathing to get you into your body.
Okay.
And and then I would ask you to go back into the most recent iteration of the dream. And this is something, it's very similar to something Jung called active imagination, where you take a dream image and kind of go back into it and expand it and um, just find out what is there, what it's telling you, just so you can be pretty receptive in when you're in this dream altered state.
Hmm.
And so you can try it on your own.
Yeah, I probably
If you,
will. Um,
yeah.
how long does it typically take a client or maybe yourself to kind of sink into that state? Because there's a difference between just take a couple breaths to ground yourself and slow down a little versus like, let's enter this altered state of being.
Mhm. The longer I work with people, the quicker it goes. But the whole process often doesn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes.
Mm.
It's like time changes. People will come out of it, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, probably not 5. But people will come out and be like, God, that, felt long. And I'm like, yeah, we still got another 15, 20 minutes left in the session. It wasn't that long, but I do think time changes when we're not in our normal reality. It, so yeah, I like to make sure people are really, really comfortable and relaxed. And of course, just like with EMDR, I don't do these kind of practices with people until I've seen them for several sessions and know that they trust me and that we have a rapport.
Hmm.
That's really important
Yeah.
before you ask somebody, especially if I'm asking them to go back into their trauma.
Hmm. Yeah, have that strong trust and understanding of their nervous system and how they might respond to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, because sometimes people can get really scared and have a panic reaction. I know I have
Mhm.
sometimes when I've been early on when I was learning this technique and we would practice on each other. The other thing that I think is really fascinating to me, internal family systems, is really Jungian, because Jung is famous for having the archetypes. And
Mm.
the archetypes are really just ideas that energize aspects of our personalities.
Mm.
They're just parts. I hate the word parts, but I like sub-personalities better.
Okay. That's fair. I think I like parts because it is a little bit more ambiguous. And so
Hmm.
I I love to get super creative with it. I almost let each part become a resource, like through EMDR,
Hmm.
where it can be a version of you
Hmm.
or a part of your personality, but it could also be a shape or an animal or
Hmm.
just like a colorful energy, just however your body is processing
Hmm.
how this looks to you, then that's how it looks.
Hmm.
And so I sometimes, if I say like another part of your personality or sub personalities, like people get so caught up in the idea of this is me, but slightly different
Hmm.
versus it could be anything.
Hmm. Yeah, it absolutely can be. It can be
Yeah.
a color, a shape, an animal. I had this one client that had a whole council, like it was great. She had
Mhm.
this council that she would talk. I mean, there would be a bear and
Mm.
an elephant and her grandfather, and I mean,
That's
it
amazing.
it was just it was. And that's the other thing. I just love how differently everybody processes their experience.
Mhm.
You really have to be prepared for anything.
Oh, yeah. I had one client once come up with the image of like a white wolf came up and ate the thing that was traumatizing.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just sitting there
Yeah.
like, this is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's just amazing. And how people, yeah, how
Well, and
people,
tying it back to the idea of you have to get away from the intellectual. You have to drop into your body because emotions aren't logical. And sometimes the way our brain tries to make sense of it doesn't make any sense.
hmm.
And you have to trust that process and be willing to go with what comes up for you,
Right.
even if intellectually you can't understand it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because a lot of it doesn't. I mean, dreams don't make sense
Mm-mm.
intellectually a lot of times. I mean, you jump around and one you're on a train, and then the next thing you know, you're in a house, and it just is like um, they don't follow any kind of logic,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
Hmm.
So
So, okay, my mind is tying this back to just the fact that you started as like an English major running a coffee shop, and here we are talking about depth psychology and trauma and going beyond words.
yeah.
And it's so impressive that you had this pain point in your journey that it could have curled you in further and brought out more protection and been like, nope, I'm going to stay the course. I just need to keep going. I just need to push through, which, a lot of humans have that reaction. But your mind went to, there's something here that I need to move through. Like, I need to figure this out. I have found language that clicks for me. And you completely shifted your life
Yeah,
in
it's true.
following that urge. And just that's amazing to me.
Mhm. Um, I feel like I've always just sort of followed what comes up for me, and generally, I find myself in a positive situation. I mean, I never grew up thinking I'm going to own a cafe someday. I probably would have thought a bookstore would be more my style. So I did have that, but there's just an urge to learn and to just follow wherever curiosity takes you in that moment and pursue it to the extent that you can. I remember finishing my first semester working on my master's degree. It was December. I came home, it was late at night, the kids were asleep. And I just stood outside and looked up at the sky and I saw a shooting star. And I was again, it's just this like symbol of like all is well, and it it's okay. Keep going,
Mm.
right?
You might not have an answer for this question, but when you start noticing that there's curiosity for a new path and, that feeling of it's right, like keep going,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what does that actually feel like? Like, how do you notice that it's time to maybe think about that shift or move towards that new curiosity?
Oh, it's just so all-consuming, I think.
Mm.
The desire to learn more, like moving here. God knows, I never thought I would live in Kansas City, Missouri, but uh, you know, part of my family was here, and they moved here, and so I became pretty fixated on getting here to be near my grandson. Now I have grandchildren in Las Vegas, and I have a new grandson in Brooklyn. So not moving to those places. It's just hard. It's just hard to be away from the other ones. But I have a very, very special relationship with my grandson who is here. So
Yeah.
it's just
What
lovely.
was it like watching your kids become parents?
Oh, it's been great. I think I've been very impressed with their parenting. Yeah, I really enjoy seeing them be parents and developing their own ways of raising their kids and
Mm.
teaching them. They all are different, all three sets of families, but they're all great parents, I think.
Okay. I'm curious about the similarities and the differences. Because, I mean, we talked kind of before we started recording about these different seasons of life. And so, what feels like it's more of a universal human experience versus this is just a season or this is who they are?
Oh, in parenting,
Maybe in parenting, in life, just
in
what comes
life.
up for you as I ask that question?
Right. Well, I think to me the big, big difference in your generation, my kids' generation, is the technology. I am so grateful that the technology was not available when my kids were growing up. I mean, I thought they had a lot of TV time, and I was pretty conscious about not letting them have so much. But now it's just like, I mean, my kids didn't have cell phones until, I don't know, high school, probably. I mean, I
Mhm.
didn't have a cell phone until, I don't, when did they become 90s? In the 90s? Was
I
that?
want to say the 90s, yeah.
So do you remember a time without cell phones?
I do. I remember when my dad came home with his first cell phone for work, and it was the giant brick with the huge antenna. I want to say
Okay.
80s is when it started becoming a thing, and I think 90s is when it started like existing in every household.
Everybody had one.
I also
Yeah.
remember when he brought home the first home computer. We were so excited.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just these a generation, and now they've
Mhm.
become, so ubiquitous and to, just bad for humanity in so many ways. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously, again, with the paradox, they're so good for so many aspects of our lives and so damaging to, I mean, just the way they've amplified teen suicides and bullying. And
Well,
I
and
don't, I mean,
it's made to be addictive. So you want more and you need more. And when you try to do a cleanse, your body is just like, oh, you're restricting me and you want it more the next
right,
time.
right. Yeah.
And
So, I mean, that's the thing. This isn't a criticism, but my kids are all on their cell phones. Their kids see it. I mean, I'm on my grandson. If I leave my phone in the other room, he brings it to me. He's like, "Oh, you forgot your phone." Like,
it's
you know,
important.
yeah. And he knows how to swipe, and I mean, he's 3,
Wow.
and
Wow.
it's just like, what? how are you going to manage it? How are, I that's I'm really curious to see how this is gonna play out
Yeah.
if I live long enough.
I was listening to a podcast episode on purpose with Jay Shetty, and he was interviewing Michelle Obama, and they were talking about technology. And they mentioned, I did not fact check it, but I trust them. They mentioned a research article that showed that the amount of information that we take in nowadays in a single day matches what someone 20 years ago would take their entire lifetime to take in.
Oh
It
my
is
God.
just constant information all the time. And it's such a short period of time that that has evolved that our brains haven't had the time to evolve themselves to be able to process and handle that amount of information.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, more stress and addiction and uncertainty of how to navigate it and increase in teen suicide because increase in knowledge of everything in the world. That includes, pain and trauma
Mm-hmm.
and all the bad things that are happening everywhere. 20
Mm-hmm.
years ago, you didn't hear about a random act of violence that happened in a small town on the other side of the world. But today you hear it anyway.
Yeah, our brains can't keep up with it, and we're also. I mean, sometimes I wonder. I try to only read news from sources that I trust, but I still wonder how many lies I've ingested
Mhm.
in reading the news for the day. It's there have to be some. Not,
Especially with the
I don't.
constant news cycle, they're always trying to find something to report all the time. It's exhausting. But like you said, that paradox, maybe we dive into that a little bit more, but it's also letting you and I have this conversation right now
I know it
and me
is.
to work with my clients all over the state, no
Mm-hmm.
matter where they're living,
Mm-hmm.
because I can be online with them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much more access to community
Mm-hmm.
on top of access to everything else.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's weird sometimes to think about the fact that so many of my clients, I have no idea how tall they are. or and they don't know that I'm in my pajama bottoms while we talk.
It's so true. I will tell some of my clients, I'm like, I am in sweats right now because comfort is needed for trauma work. You want to show up in your pajamas? You are welcome because we want comfort.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm thinking about the paradox because I think one of the most challenging pieces in this work that we do is that idea of acceptance. Because it's so easy to accept when everything's going well and everything's in your control and you've got it handled. You're like, of course I can accept this.
Right.
But when you're in pain or you're navigating that shadow self or you're sitting in the trauma, it is so hard to accept that that is your experience and that a lot of people struggle to even trust that they're safe when they're thinking about something from the past. And just the paradox of like, you kind of have to let it both exist and be able
Mhm.
to hold the paradox as it is without trying to force it to be something it's not.
Yeah, I think that acceptance is one of the basic underlying principles of healing, that you really can't change anything until you accept the reality of what is and what has been. I think especially if you've experienced extreme childhood trauma and you feel like life has not been fair and you're a victim, you know, okay, it's true that those are true statements. Is that where you want to stay?
I love that question. Is that where you want to stay? Because it's where you've been, and that's true, but that doesn't have to dictate your future.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's a key. I mean, I just think it's key to everything in therapy, working with doing addictions work, whatever got you to being addicted to something. that's true. It's reality. It's what happened to you. And this is the coping mechanism that you chose or fell into, found yourself using, however it happened. And yeah, is that what you want to continue doing? Is that the choice you want to make? We're always at choice point in our lives.
Do you have any intentions or concepts for how to notice the choice points?
Mm.
It's so easy to feel stuck and to not even see that you could have curiosity, that you could make a different choice.
Mm-hmm. I think that for a lot of us, that choice point comes when we're just so sick of our behavior that we really can't take it anymore, or we realize it's really going to do lasting harm to ourselves or others. It's a pretty clear choice point. But I also think in a spiritual sort of Buddhist way that every moment can be a choice point. If we choose to let it be, if we accept that's the reality of the life that we're living. I mean, I'm pretty disturbed by my cell phone usage right now. And sometimes I ask myself, you going to go blind looking at this thing? I mean, what is it going to take to walk away from this and do something, other things I really want to do?
Yeah.
So I know I'm at choice point. I know every morning when I wake up, I could leave the phone on the charger and not bring it with me into my meditation space. I know that. But most mornings I do.
You're making an interesting point here because, like you said when we started the choice point conversation, of it's a little bit more obvious when it's negatively impacting you or your family or your lifestyle. When it hinders your functioning, it's like, okay, yeah, this is a choice point. But EMDR language, like maladaptive patterns, the pathways in our brains that allow these patterns to exist, a maladaptive pattern can seem positive. Mm-hmm. Like it can give you something and not necessarily negatively affect you outwardly while it's still being a maladaptive pattern. My phone always being in my pocket, or me always having it anytime I have a free moment, automatically checking it just out of habit and just scrolling until the next time I have to do something.
Right.
Technically, it's not making my life worse. Like I'm not losing money on this. I'm not, disconnecting from my friends because of it, but I'm less present because of it.
Yeah, and you are losing time. The time could be, that's what my argument with myself is. 10 minutes, I can't really do anything. I'll just scroll. There are a lot of positive things you could do in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I could do 10 minutes of yoga. I could write a letter to somebody. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do in that 10 minutes. It's automatic. And that's the thing about addiction, is that you don't think. It's so automatic that you just do that. You come home from work, you reach for the beer in the fridge. Don't even think about it until somebody says, how many beers have you had tonight? And you're like, oh, well, when did I take that first beer? I don't know. I don't remember. It's just a habit. It's just so ingrained in us.
And it might start out really positive, right? Like, oh, I'm just going to check and see if my friends have texted me. Ooh, that beer makes me feel so confident. Oh, this is such a good thing. It's giving me a break from my trauma, right? Like it can have this really positive experience. Or like, thinking about food even. It's like, ooh, I'm going to give myself that little treat. Like it's amazing to have little treats and to reward yourself for something. But if every single time you do something, you grab that cookie, eventually that's going to be an ingrained habit of, ooh, I need that cookie. Oh my God, I'm out of cookies. I need more cookies. And suddenly, choice point.
I talk to my addiction clients about, it's like, how did something that started out being so pleasurable for you, when did it turn hurtful? When did it start to harm you? And why do you keep using it even though you don't enjoy it anymore? It's almost like we're always trying to get back to that point of, this felt really good. but even by the third or fourth beer, you're not feeling good anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
we still, that is what I think is just so difficult about changing an addictive habit in your life. Any addictive habit. I mean, I think
Yeah.
honestly, maybe food isn't a separate category because we do have to have food.
We have to have food. And having good food that you enjoy that brings you pleasure, there is nothing wrong with that. It definitely is its own separate category. I've been reading Reclaiming Body Trust, the book right now, and it is so powerful.
I haven't read that. Yeah, I should put
Um,
that on my list.
I highly recommend it. And my supervisor recommended I read it. And that was like a year ago. And I'm finally getting around to it. And I'm really glad that I did.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's so caught up in our emotions and our self-images, especially as women in our
Mhm.
culture. It's just really complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was on the other side. I did a lot of restriction and over exercising when I was younger. And I was just starting to get to the point where my brain was going, oh, this might be a problem. And I did a health class, which now I have some issues with, where we like tracked our BMI and where are you? And there's so much wrong with BMI to in any way. But I was in the red, just barely. And I remember it scared me. And I started going, oh, I need to eat more. Oh, I need to stop exercising as much. And like, I didn't get help. I did it all on my own.
Mhm.
There's this narrative in my head that I'm constantly fighting around how it should be and how I should look. And, oh, you didn't exercise this week. Are you sure you want to eat that thing? It's like they don't have to be tied together. And yet my brain automatically does it. And I have to consciously pause and go, do I want this belief to exist here? Is it true? Do I want to give it power? No, I want them to be separate. That means I can go out and celebrate this very specific thing and have not exercised that week. That's okay. I want to be able to exercise for me so that my body feels lighter, that my joints don't hurt,
Right.
but I
Yeah,
don't want
pause.
it to be tied to my food.
Yeah, I don't think you ever recover from an eating disorder. I mean, maybe any addiction, there's always that little voice in your head. For me, there's like a little ticker tape counting the calories unless I stop it and just say, I don't care. I mean, 70 years old, for God's sake, I have had to accept a lot of things about my body that I don't want to, but they're just realities about getting older. And yet there's still this part of me that's just like, oh, let's see if I lost a couple pounds this week. Then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't really care if I did or gained or whatever, but it's just there.
Well, and it's natural, right? It is natural for your body to shift and adjust. I always gain weight when I'm really stressed. My body holds on to it because that's what my body is trained to do.
Yeah.
Evolutionarily, when times get hard, your body goes, oop, we need to protect you. Let's hold on to all this just in case.
Yeah. Slow the metabolism.
Slow the metabolism down. And so I know that that's a thing that my body does.
Right.
And yet, every time I go through several months of high stress and I start gaining weight, my brain freaks out. And, I start having that like fat phobic language and start having really negative thoughts towards myself. And every time I have to pause and go, no, this is just what your body looks like when it's holding stress. Your body is holding stress for you, and it's okay. But oh my God, is it a constant choice point of
Mm-hmm.
how do you want to show up? How do you want to treat yourself?
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to exist in this world?
Yeah, and I think I hope that if people who are thinking about therapy and not sure about it ever listen to a podcast like this, they see that therapists are just as often just struggle or have struggled with life as everybody
Yeah.
else does.
Therapists are human too.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much human. Yeah.
kind of bringing this back to, you had mentioned, it feels like a yes, right? When your body tells you, yes, keep going in that direction. Yes, be curious about this. Yes, move that way. I think that that exists with everything, not just with career, but with who you want to be with and how you want to show up with your family and how you show up with your body and what kind of mental health journey you're on, which therapist you go and see.
Absolutely.
Like every single point in life, if you can figure out what you're curious about and what feels like a yes, well, then even if that changes a week from now or a year from now, it was probably the right choice in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my daughters for Christmas gave me a gift it's called Storyworth. And every week she sends me a question about my life and I write a little story about it. And then at the end of the year, the Storyworth puts it together in a little book of memories. So it's like a really great way to get stories that you might never hear from your parents or, from anybody, grandparents. I feel like doing this has helped me kind of look back over my life a little bit. And I really don't, I think I have any big regrets, I mean, I can think about some things I wish I had done differently for sure. But I feel like kind of just allowing life to take me on a journey has worked out. It's not a bad way to go.
Say you've lived an incredible life, and I'm so grateful that I have been a piece of it.
I'm grateful that you've been a piece of it too.
I think you have this incredible perspective, just the ability, and I think it's just you. I don't think it's necessarily something that you've learned over the series of your life, but this ability to just kind of zoom out and go, what does feel right? What do I want to do? And it's just so inspiring.
I think that a lot of it is learning to trust different aspects of yourself. I would say that I was trained from a young age to not trust my intuition. When people would say that, trust your gut, I'd be like, what are they talking about? What does that mean? Trust your gut.
No, I need to logically think about what the right answer is.
Yeah, it was so weird to me. And it really wasn't until I got into studying psychology and especially somatic work that I understood what it meant and realized that I hadn't trusted my gut in a lot of different areas. That was something that I felt like I really wanted my kids to know. Literally, if you are upset, if you're throwing up before you go to school, something is the matter and you should tell me what it is right now. Please. Yeah. Or if you can. It's like giving children a path to speak what their experience is, even when maybe they don't have all the words for it, but their bodies are certainly telling you. And that was when I started to put together for myself that when my stomach is upset and it's not just the flu bug, there's something that my body is really trying to tell me. And it's important to be able to listen to that, but I think we're trained to not, to use our intellect, use our brains.
And how powerful to be able to slow down and listen to that voice and teach the people, your kids in your life, to say, hey, you have a stomach ache. Is it that you ate something bad or is there something more going on here? Like you gave them emotional intelligence and somatic intelligence by having that curiosity towards them.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope they did.
And now you get to help them figure out how to teach that to their kids.
No, I just get to be grandma and play games.
Oh, that's fun too.
Come on, fun adventures.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I have one last question for you, and it's more my curiosity. We can leave it in if you're okay with it. But my curiosity is, where is your curiosity taking you right now? Like, what direction are you currently moving towards in life?
I am curious about what it would be like to move to another country right now.
That makes sense.
I'm still really curious about the whole mushroom psilocybin journey, but it's kind of been on hold because I'm here and I I really can't do much more with it. I can come back to Colorado and take my own journeys.
I would love to have you on the podcast to talk about psilocybin at some point. I've had a lot of people request it, and it is so out of my scope of knowledge.
Yeah, no, I would really love to talk about it, but yeah, it's not something that I'm going to be able to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
Made the choice to come here and be with family.
Yeah.
Gave up the psilocybin training.
So it feels a little unfinished.
It really does. I'm just fascinated with all those aspects of our being that we are unconscious of that are there. And when I've taken trips when I was young, and we were just, take anything anybody gave you and just have fun and laugh. And it was totally undirected. But it never would have occurred to me then that you could take some mushrooms and then tell your guide and yourself that you want to work on these things. And it works. It happens. I think that is so fascinating. It's just like you can tell your dreaming mind, I want an answer to this problem, and your dreaming mind will come up with it.
Wow.
It's possible to do that.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating?
That is fascinating.
Yeah. There's so much more to us than we realize.
Mm-hmm. That's something I've said forever, of just, the energy work and the Reiki and all this stuff that people are so skeptical about. It's like, yeah, but people were skeptical about hand washing at one point. And so I do believe there's energy and something gets transferred. I don't think our language and our science can understand it to the full point yet. And the stuff that feels woo-woo and out there is our best attempt to understand what is actually happening.
Yeah. That's another thing Jung said. He said science and spirituality will come together.
Mm-hmm. I believe that. It did with witchcraft. It did with the understanding of bacteria and different, like ashwagandha stuff that helps your body. Initially, it just felt like, this is witchcraft. You're saying take that thing and I feel better. And then later down the line, they're like, oh, that helps with inflammation. Oh, this isn't antibacterial. Oh, this makes so much sense. There's still a lot left to be discovered with the brain and with the body, I think.
Yeah, so much. Mm-hmm. If I was younger, I think I'd go back to school and study neurobiology. Mm-hmm.
I still think about it, but
Do you?
I do. I've always wanted my PhD, but I also like what I'm doing and exploring right now. So it's hard to want to pause that to go back to school,
Yeah, so you're not at yes yet.
I'm not at yes yet. Right now I'm at yes at doing EMDR and becoming a consultant, and I might become an instructor with that. And there's a lot that's happening right now. It's doing my podcast.
Yeah, you really are taking on a lot. It's so great. Well, as always, I am so impressed with you. You really are an inspiration.
I mean, I feel the exact same way about you. And every time we chat, I learn something new about you and your life and your perspective. And just, I am so blown away by who you are as a person. And I'm so grateful that you're in my life.
Right back at you.
Faye is one of the kindest, most accepting people that I've had the pleasure of meeting. Her authentic curiosity for life and ability to go with the flow and just trust that she is where she needs to be inspires me to slow down, to be more authentic, and to be in my present moment. Hopefully something today that we talked about resonated with you. And if it did, let yourself sit with that idea for a little while longer. If you have any questions for this podcast or any themes you'd like us to focus on in the future, send us a message on Instagram at Insights With Us Podcast, or send us an email at insightswithus@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please follow, like, or subscribe. If you want to support the continuation of this podcast, you can donate. To do so, find me, Anastasia Soroka, on buymeacoffee.com, or you can even have a chance to sponsor an episode. You can find Insights With Us now on Patreon. I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you are listening. Thank you for creating insight with us.